Hello, I'm Timothy Potts, the director of the Fitz Museum, and welcome to this Sculpture Promenade for 2010. This is the second of these installations that we've done. Last year, in the inaugural one, we had great success in bringing a whole new audience to the Fitz Museum, and I'm sure this one will continue to do that. This year's selection of artists is, of course, different than last. It's a range of artists, some of them very established and well-known and famous figures. Others are younger and more emerging talents, but are already making their mark in the British sculpture scene. The selection of artists was made by myself in conjunction with Helaine Blumenfeld, who was the Vice President of the Royal British Society of Sculptors. And it's the second time we've worked together in this way, and there is such a variety, such a spectrum of different approaches out there, that it's not an easy process. And we were also concerned to select work that works well together.
I'm Helaine Blumenfeld. I'm a sculptor myself. I am very excited to have been involved in the very beginning of this promenade 2.5 years ago. I am really a sort of missionary for sculpture, because I think that sculpture is something that not only enlightens people, but in many ways makes them aware of the beauty around them, the life beyond the consumer life we all lead. And I think sculpture has been too contained in galleries and in museums. So the idea of bringing sculpture out, literally on the street, which is what we've done with the promenade, is a tremendously appealing thing. And I think one of the reasons we were able to do it last year so economically, both in terms of time, energy and money, was that we drew upon sculptors from the Royal Society of British Sculptors. So we know that we're looking at the best sculptors. The reason for using that society has been that it's really a shortcut to quality.
This is the second of our sculpture promenades, and I was very pleased that our inaugural one last year was so successful in bringing a new audience to the museum. We did a survey in conjunction with the Judge Business School, and the results were extremely pleasing and gratifying in that it brought the largest category of visitors were the 16 to 24-year-olds, so exactly the young people we want to bring in and engage in what we're doing. And even more importantly, once people had come in and seen the sculptures on the lawn, most of them then made the decision to go inside the museum and see some of our historical collections inside. And it's this connection between the art of the past and the art of the present that I'm very keen that it be more part of the programming and the focus of what we do at the Fitz Museum.
We certainly did something much more ambitious this year. We had 6 sculptors and we had 14 works. The challenge really wasn't the technical one when we thought of it, but to present work that would be seen from the street as you passed, not just having to look through the grating, but actually coming up over the grating in some cases, and to present work that would not have been available to people in Cambridge, even in any of the museums. There is no venue that would show the kind of work that, for example, Angela Conor did. We wanted people to see really kinetic work that is alive to the elements in a sense. And I think that they will be fascinated by this. So one of the things we really wanted was to create a sense of monumentality and how large work doesn't necessarily have to isolate the viewer, but draws you in.
I think people who visited the installation last year will also be surprised that some of these, in this case, some of them are actually constructed so that the parts of them move with the wind. Others of them are made in materials which are surprising to the touch. One in particular is not a stiff material, but you press it and it actually gives way. It's almost like human flesh, and it's intended to give that impression by the artist. So there are some surprises in store in this one, and I think people really will enjoy the direct interaction with the works, which is exactly what outdoor sculpture allows you to do.
I know we can judge the success of last year's show by all the statistics that have come out to prove how many more people are coming. But the real excitement for me is just going by the Fitzwilliam Museum almost any time of day during the week or Saturday, and amazingly on a Sunday, when the whole court pavilion is full of people being photographed, standing with the work, making drawings of it, touching them. And this was so energizing, the museum. And I don't know of any project which within 1 year could change the face of a museum in the way that the Sculpture Promenade did. And I'm very proud to have been part of that.
I'm Angela Conor, and I have 3 sculptures that are part of the show at the Fitzwilliam Museum. All my work is involved in the natural forces, either wind or water or gravity or sun or shadows. And for those reasons, they all move in response to those forces. The pieces that are here are all wind-based, because water might be a complication. The instincts behind them, apart from wanting us all, as a nation and as a whole people of this planet, is to have some sense of our link with the whole of the universe. You know, we're a tiny, tiny bit of it, and it's very easy to get wrapped up in some tiny mental corner and not realize we're part of some enormous, awe-inspiring and wonderful, forceful universe. The pieces are intended to give a tranquility to those who watch them, because I feel we're all under such stress today, with demands on us visually looking at boards and hoardings and notices and the noise that's around us and so on. And it's very nice to sit down by a fire and watch the logs change and shift, or watch my sculptures change and shift. And I do find always in the public forum that these pieces attract people's attention, and they stop and they look and they calm down, even if it's only for a few minutes. I have far too many ideas, and I make tiny, tiny maquettes of them. And most of my sculptures are far too big for me to make myself. I'd be bankrupt in a month. So what happens when I'm commissioned is that I go back to the small maquettes, find one that suits the site and the people and the purpose that I've already made as an idea, but can't afford to do just ad lib. And therefore I've got big, big, big pieces, the tallest indoor mobile in London and the tallest outdoor mobile in Dublin. My things tend to be big, so for me these 3 pieces are small miniatures for bigger ones to come.
My name's Nick Turvey. I'm one of the 6 sculptors in the Promenade show. I've got 2 pieces of work here which were made especially for this exhibition, and they're from a series of work that I'm calling Incarnate, which takes a base form, which is a sort of undulatory, vibratory base form, and puts it through various transformations and elaborations. It's called Incarnate because I'm interested in the human body as a material object, and how the body plays a role in myth, in fairy tale, in propaganda, in fetish. So if you look at the 2 pieces, one is very kind of bloody, rusty, steely, and is prone, collapsed, expired, skeletal. And the other piece is sort of upright and fleshy and soft and pink and vulnerable. And there are connections to the museum, the works in the body of the museum, because there are any number of fantastic paintings featuring Venus by Titian and Rubens and Jacopo della Palma. And you go and look at them, and there's this sort of essence of bodily fleshiness in the paintings. Obviously, you know, they have faces and arms and legs, but I was interested in, could one produce a sculpture that was about a pure excess of voluptuous fleshiness in a way that was both attractive and repulsive? And I was also interested in making a sculpture in a public space that was soft, because sculpture is normally so kind of tough, and I like the idea of putting something vulnerable in a public space and seeing how people treat it, you know, whether it survives or not. In a way, it's an experiment.
My name's Rob Ward. I have 3 pieces of work in the Sculpture Promenade at the Fitzwilliam Museum. The works are architectural in their context. They're all taken from particular architectural elements, and they're all made in polished stainless steel. Each piece of work is designed to actually reflect the building, and the people who pass by. So the intention is that the sculptural form becomes a kind of meditation on not only the form but also on the person's reflection in it. So they're intended really to return yourself to your own looking process. 2, for example, is a very simple piece of work which has a ball on the top and a ball on the bottom. So it not only reflects the surroundings, but it also reflects itself in that it's upside down. So there's a double take with that particular piece of work. A screen is a slightly more complicated piece of work, 3 vertical elements, and they create a rhythm down the line of the sculpture. And the end piece is a form which is designed to actually reflect the bottom part of the sculpture. The buttress piece of work is taken from the form of a flying buttress on a cathedral, of which I've made quite a few cathedrals in my time. Large-scale works, and that again is a very simple, very stable form. I deliberately sighted them in slightly different ways. I didn't want them to be in a line. I wanted the 2 pieces to have quite a close relationship, screen and buttress, and I wanted the other piece 2 to kind of stand apart from it. Mainly because 2 actually frames the architecture quite well, and the other 2 are meant to sort of merge into the architecture.
My name's Christopher. I'm very excited to have these pieces outside the Fitzwilliam because it gives a new audience an opportunity to see some of my work. There's 3 pieces outside, one called Held Shadow, which is a Corten steel piece, and 2 cast bronzes, one called Line of Silence and one called Beyond Silence. I want people to be interested enough to stand there and look at them and wonder, and my works tend to be contemplative. That's not necessarily by design, it's just the way they've come out over the years. And they're abstract, as are actually all the works in this particular exhibition. The reason I respond to other people's abstract work as well is that it stimulates your imagination. You know, you've got to stand and look at it and think, I like that shape, or I don't like that shape, or that shape reminds me of. Things like that. I want that kind of response, or I would like that kind of response from people. The titles, actually, they are very important to me, and they tend to happen at the end when the work is completed. When I'm making something, I'll start thinking about the title and possibly have 2 or 3 potential titles written down, and then one will suddenly become dominant. I mean, Held Shadow, for example, which is the Corten piece, is very descriptive because there's 2 Corten spikes which are literally holding visually an upright piece of steel. And at that time I was I was fascinated with shadows. And so although it's a very solid piece, it's kind of contradictory.
My name is Nick Hornby. The sculpture I have at the Fitzwilliam is called I Never Wanted to Weigh More Heavily on a Man Than a Bird, which is a quote by Coco Chanel. With collage, often it's destructive, and as you overlap things, you no longer see what was underneath it. In the case of this object, it's literally the common ground between 3 extruded 2D cutouts. It's literally what lies in between 3 drawings evenly distributed around 360 degrees. In this instance, it's Barbara Hepworth's Form 3, Rodin's Walking Man, and Brancusi's Bird in Space. This piece of work was a prototype for a very large new body of work, and it stemmed from a set of questions that were initiated by Nicholas Byriard of the Ultramodern. I did this slightly curious stream of interventions working with a group of young people, and I was briefed to co-author a piece of institutional interpretation which was once a reflection of their own plurality of interpretations, and also myself, and also an open-ended object which could be a point of access, point of entry for the viewer. What that led to was this question of autonomy and authorship. I hope that what it is a lot of shared ideas at the moment are surrounding a revision of modernity through some sort of dissatisfaction with recent past. I am part of that gambit, but I think my approach is more an act of camaraderie than a critique.
This is Timothy Potts, the director of the Fitzwilliam Museum again. I'd like to talk to you this time about the artist Michael Lyons. Unfortunately, Mike is not able to record some comments on the works himself, so I'd like to tell you a bit about him. Mike lives and works in Yorkshire, but he does travel a great deal. Much of the time has been spent in China and in Mexico, and both of these areas have had profound effect on his life and indeed the ideas in his work. But his upbringing was in the industrial Midlands, and that does heavily inform the nature and style of his work, as you can see in these two very constructed, monumental, very powerful works. Mike's work is very dynamic, it's very strong, it's very muscular, but it certainly also has a very poetic dimension to it. And he's very much influenced by mythologies and philosophies, not only in the Western tradition, but also very much in China and elsewhere in the East. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this Sculpture Promenade. It's become a major fixture for us, particularly with its focus on what's happening in the art world today. It's been hugely successful engaging with younger audiences, and we very much hope that that'll continue into the future and that you'll continue to come back in years ahead. Thank you.